Unshadowed Thought podcast with James Hall. This is the series I'm going to call Working Past It, and it's dedicated to the people that have reached out to me in good faith to try to get through this injury and a host of other injuries in an effort to live a life that is a little bit more rewarding and is just in a better place. I want to thank the people that have reached out to me and dedicate this set to them. All right, welcome back to the Unshadowed Thought podcast, and we're going to jump into the mind's role in recovery from chronic illness and TMS injury, psychiatric injury. And I'd love to say that like these different injuries, these different diseases, like I'm just going to call them like neurological injury, or I like to call them like neurological agitation, right? I'd love to say there's differences between all these things, but I have not found any evidence of differences. There are some slight variations, but at the core, it all seems to be the same between all these things. So when I say we're looking at the aspect of mind on this like really broad group of things, that I am talking about handling, getting better, and recovering from any neurological injury, essentially, and which is different than like a physiological injury, like a burn or something like that, right? Those a different kind of healing and process that you go through. Although I'm not sure that mind doesn't play just as big of a role in those things as well, which is wild, because when we talk about mind today, we're really stepping into a space that it's hard to quantify, hard to describe scientifically altogether, right? Science is an extremely poor track record of being able to describe or measure the effect that the human mind has on the human body, right? So but we're going to delve into what I've learned and how I see it and how I understand things now and how that's helped me recover. So here we are, and again, to kind of recap for a moment, is there's some big things that go into it, right? The body plays a role. So the body gives us feedback and kind of forces our mind to feel a certain way about things, right? And we may feel really depressed and sad, or really excited and panicked, or we may feel really good and positive about things because of the bodily sensations we get, right? And then, of course, the flip side is the mind sending signals and changes to the body and affecting how the body is doing and reacting to things as well, right? Like if you think super stressful thoughts, right, your body starts reacting a certain way. It doesn't respond as well. You can become jittery, right? You can even panic. You can send adrenaline. Your organs can start failing. Your limbs can start failing and twitching and doing all this stuff just simply based on the thoughts that you have, right? Not to mention your heart beating faster, losing lung capacity, right? All of our other organs respond in some way as well to increased stress, panic, and then fatigue and depression, same thing, right? They all react based on the mind. So there's this push and pull from the mind. We know that an extremely strong body can make the workload very, very light on the mind, right? And we know an extremely strong mind can completely overcome the body, right? There's spiritual and religious stories of people with strong minds of great faith that completely basically start affecting their physical environment with their mind and their own bodies, right? It's amazing. They're far out stories, but if we look at science, right, we look at quantum mechanics and different things, and we see that there's really no space in between, or a tremendous amount of space in between our cells, and they're interconnected to other, our atoms are connected to other atoms, and they all interact, right? There's really nothing stopping us from believing that the mind can have an incredible and complete impact on reality. Because when we look at quantum mechanics, at the smallest level, the smallest pieces of matter respond to an observer, right? So if you're looking at an experiment of sending light photons through a certain pathway, right, the results change based on an observer being present. So at the smallest detail of reality that we can see through science, right, we can see that the mind in the presence of a human mind impacts reality. So there's a whole another sidebar, right? But with that being said, right, the importance of the mind is incredibly high, right? I tend to think, and what I'd like to say is that the mind has the biggest role, right? And the body has a big role, but it's not quite as big as the mind. That's what I'd like to say. Can I really find some way to prove that to you? I can't, because, or rather I should say, like, if you had a perfect mindset, right, and you're just mentally, you're flawless, completely controlled with your mind, you had perfect mental discipline, right, you could control your body and everything going on around you perfectly, right? But that's not really relevant for any of us, because there's no one that can do that, right? So your body's always going to have, it's always going to be this mind-body circuit, right, where your body's going to give feedback to your mind's going to have some difficulty dealing with that feedback, or it's going to be helped by that feedback, right, if you feel well, right? You have really positive body sensations, and your mind will be easy to kind of deal with. You'll feel happy and comfortable, and you'll want to go nuts and do fun stuff, right? And you'll really enjoy your life. And then the flip is also true. Like, a really severe negative mindset will impact your body. And I mean, if you look at the effect of stress on human beings, essentially high stress, high chronic stress, right, it ends a life extremely quickly, and builds degenerative disease very quickly, and like really limits all kinds of function. A positive mindset has tremendous health benefits that we can see observably, diagnostically in science, right? And there's all these kinds of studies and stuff that show, oh, well, people that did this activity like 3 times a day for a month had these positive physiological results in their body, right? Those studies are, they're flawed from the beginning, right? Because really what they're trying to measure is the effect that someone's mindset has on their body, or rather the mind-body connection and loop, right? Like, oh, you do these positive things for your mind, and your body's positively affected, which in turn gives you a positive mindset, right? And then you're just healthier, right? That's because science can't measure your thoughts, right? And never will be able to. People are gonna try, and it'll always be a trite, ridiculous, flawed measurement, right? Because human beings, like, we have the privacy of our minds for a reason. I don't believe that physics will allow it to be violated, right? But okay, enough generality here, but those are the things that we know for facts that are true. So when I talk about this stuff, that's where I'm coming from. And I'm coming from this angle is because this is what I've learned and experienced, and I've seen in everyone around me, right? I'm not saying it because it worked for me, but it's not working for other people, right? I'm leaving that out of it. I'm only talking on this podcast about stuff that I've seen that's been irrefutably true across everybody, including myself. The situational perspectives, I don't think are really going to help anybody. I've been given situational perspectives on healing from the moment I got hurt, and it took me 5 years to sort through all that crap, right, and all those lies to get to a spot where someone might be able to actually benefit from my advice and my experience, because what I'm doing, you can apply it universally across everybody, right? As far as I've seen, and I've talked to hundreds of people, and I've read thousands of exchanges between myself and others, or the people that have been hurt for about all this kinds of stuff, including personal relationships, friends and family that I personally know, and then people that I've met, that I built friendships with, and lots of strangers, lots of doctors that I've seen, and ones I haven't seen, that I've been able to talk to and engage on this stuff. So that's where I'm coming from. Okay, so to get to it, the mind is, again, I would say it's the most critical piece, but the body, for all intensive purposes for us, is just as critical, right? But the mind, you can't stop your mind. You're always present with your mind, right? You're always existing in your mind somewhere. So this plays an incredibly powerful role in your recovery, and I'll explain that to you. So you're probably not a toddler, right? You probably have a well-established pattern of thought and mental activity that you've developed since you were young, right? And it's made you the unique person you are. And it comes with some great advantages. Well, it comes also with some great disadvantages. You've programmed yourself to think about the body and the responses you get from it in certain negative ways, I'm sure, if you're like everybody else. So when you experience sensations in your body, you construe them as pain, you construe them as negative, right? And hurtful. So, but they're not negative and hurtful. It's just a signal. It's just your body trying to communicate something to you. But you have thought that it's painful and negative so many times. You've trained your brain so well to associate those sensations with negativity, right, and harm, and likely some other horrible event that you're afraid to deal with, like dying or being tortured to death or something like that. Those are things that are all making your chronic illness worse, right? Those are things you have to kind of conquer and let go of in order to use your mind to help you recover, right? And let's examine some of the things that I said here, right? So someone might listen to me and hear me and be like, well, being tortured to death is actually painful and harmful and negative, right? I'm not gonna tell myself that. I'm not gonna lie to myself and say that that's okay and that's a good thing, right? Let's back up. The point of this podcast is for you to examine the very foundations of your existence physically and mentally. I'm not here to give you some quick one-size-fits-all thing for everybody that will have some benefit for me and not work for you, right? I'm challenging every single thing you've ever learned and felt in your body and in your mind. And recovering from neurological injury is exceptionally challenging. And only the people that are up for the hardest challenge available to humanity will be able to beat it and to get through it. Right? And it will test you far greater. It would be far easier for me to run 300 miles without stopping than it would be for me to beat a neurological injury, right? And the same goes for you. So if you're not up for that kind of challenge, you need to think about where you're coming from, because we're start in on it right now, right? So, right. Neurological injury, it often feels like you're being tortured to death, right? And if you tell yourself you're being tortured to death, that's exactly what's going to happen, right? If you reinforce every day, I feel like I'm being tortured, I'm in all this pain, all these different things are going on, it's causing me to die, so all that's going to happen to me now is that I'm going to be in excruciating pain and then I'm going to die, right? If you tell yourself that every day, it's going to be true. So someone might come to me and say, this is what's happening, right? And then I'll challenge them on that and say, is it really what's happening, right? Your body's sending you all these signals trying to communicate to you. Why do you think, one, you're being tortured, and then why do you think you're going to die, right? And they'll say, well, this is what I'm experiencing, and then I'm losing my function. I can't breathe well anymore. I can't walk. I can't do all these things. So the scientific evidence is showing me that I'm in a downward spiral and then I'm going to die, right? That it's going to continue to get worse until I die. And there's a historical precedent for it as well. This has happened to a lot of people, right? So, most doctors, most rational people that look at that, right, or air quotes on rational, right, will say, okay, that's a valid conclusion. You have evidence, you have historical context. Likelihood is you're gonna die from this. You're gonna suffer and then die, right? So we're trying to defeat that, and some people might say, well, then you're trying to defeat the impossible, right? And that is exactly what I aim to do, and what you will have to aim to do if you want to beat this kind of thing. This is not a goo goo gaga, like I'm just gonna ride this one out and do my best and see where I end up. That's not, you don't need to listen to this podcast if that's what you're doing, right? If that's your intention for whatever's the case, like that's not the experience that I'm sharing here. The experience that I'm sharing here is based on people's commitment to overturn everything they think and to live a life that's worth living. And I think if we go back historically and look at the people that came before us, they lived in an austere environment, both maybe culturally, Definitely nature, right? And they're given very little mentally, right, from their ancestors, their tribe probably at that point. There probably wasn't a lot of good communication, right? So they had to build. The odds were against them on everything. The only way they were going to get through their life and then thrive and move on was by overcoming the impossible, right? And that's what they passed on to us in our genetics and in their storytelling and all these things, right? So that's the perfect context for what I'm talking about, right? So when you say I'm gonna suffer or be tortured and then die, this is the worst case scenario. So I might as well like get into it, or feel sorry for myself every day, or whatever you want to call it, right? Or mentally embellish the horrific things that are happening to me. You look at human existence. You're born, right? When you're a kid, you have a good time, and then as you get older, you experience these neurological signals that come through our body. We can call them pain. We don't have to say that they're negative, but they are pain, right? This is what human beings have learned to call some of the signals that come through our body that we feel are a certain way, right? It's pain, right? You don't have to say it's negative, but it is a signal, right? You can say it's a good signal if you want. You say, some people do enjoy pain. I've heard that before, right? But you're born, right? You grow, you develop, you learn things, and then you mature. Then you start to experience all kinds of neurological sensations, all sorts of changes to your body, which include degradation and then death, right? So this is the course of life. If you think because you're experiencing a great deal of pain now, and there's a possibility that you're going to die from that, you haven't done anything incredible or amazing or anything but the most rudimentary in your thinking, right? We are all going to grow up, go through a ton of neurological sensations, our bodies are going to deteriorate, and then we're going to die and pass on, right? There are children that are 2 years old, 3 years old, whatever, that are going through this process, and they'll be dead soon, right, after an incredible amount of pain, right? And so are you telling yourself that you're better than that, you don't deserve that, right? And you're going to go try to get out of this pain that you're in and escape it so that you can live this healthy life free of pain for the rest of your years and live to a ripe old age? You say you're entitled to that, right? Is that it? So a little girl that hasn't even been able to develop and to live yet is not entitled to it. Well, that's bad luck for her, but she's going to die and pass on, right? It's just what it is, right? No, you're not better than that, right? So you need to rethink the thoughts you have around it, right? You need to stop trying to escape it is the first thing. And you need to accept it as a natural, fair, and honest part of life, okay? And that's one of the first steps. This is a mental thing, right? You have to do this every single day, right? You don't have to do exactly what I'm saying. Again, you have to figure it out for yourself. But I can tell you this, you're not entitled to any kind of comfortable existence any more than anyone else. I don't care who you are, right? And I had to do this for myself. When I had a ton of suicidal ideation, I realized that suicidal ideation was being generated from this thought that I shouldn't have to die, I shouldn't have to be in pain, and I need to try to escape it. And once I gave up on that and I accepted my death and I accepted the inevitable pain that I would experience leading up to my death, I realized that I was going to go through this process whether I was a 90, 100-year-old man or whether I was a kid, right? Maybe I couldn't help it, or now, right? Maybe this is it, right? So once I gave that up, a tremendous amount of stress, right? We're talking about the mind's impact on the body. A tremendous amount of stress left me at that time, right? And that was earlier on. And then later, I started to examine the constructs in which I examine pain, right? And I associate pain as this incredibly negative thing, right, that I'm trying to escape. And I said, why am I trying to escape this? Why is it negative? And then I was curious, can I change my reaction to pain so that my body doesn't have these negative impacts of stress? Because when you have a severe neurological condition, when you're stressed out, you're exhausted, possibly, right? There's a lot of things that can happen. And one of the things that happens to me is that when I'm under a ton of stress, I get amped, and then I get exhausted in the time that I come down for that. When I'm exhausted, like, I'm not moving much. My brain's extremely depressive and angry and agitated, and like, I'm just totally blasted, right? And I can't do much of anything, right? So that's result from this stress and the fact that I've conditioned myself to react poorly to stress, and I've been under stress for the last 5 years, and then 15 years before that with a crap job, right? And so our body is sending these signals to our brain, and our brain is sending these hormones to our body that's breaking it down, right? And there's this vicious circle based just strictly on stress, which for a lot of us, if not every single one of us, to some extent, is based on how we perceive pain, right? And the neurological sensations that are coming through our body. And you say, okay, I can say it's miraculous, and you actually vibe and get what I'm saying, right? I get it. So then you say, how do I break that, right? So say ideologically, I'm deconstructing pain in my mind, and I no longer want to think of it as a negative. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and stop being stressed out because you're in a bunch of pain. It's not going to happen. You're going to need the virtue that I talked about. You're going to need discipline and fortitude. You're going to need self-compassion and compassion for others. And you're going to need to be completely honest with yourself through the process, right? But the process is getting rid of all the other crap in your life, everything that's in your way, everything that takes up your mind space and your mental capacity, every single last thing, right? You get rid of it. And then you wake up, gotten rid of it, you start reconstructing your reality, right? You reconstruct how you think about pain. So pain, maybe you're like me, maybe you get hit with pain first thing in the morning when you're waking up. You're not even barely conscious yet, and you can feel pain in your back or somewhere else, right? And you start re-examining the way you're thinking about that pain. And the pain and your body and this vicious mind-body loop that you're in will try to force you. It'll start generating stress hormones right away. It'll start generating ideological stress. You'll start thinking, God, I wish I wasn't in this pain. This isn't like what I do to deserve this pain. I can't stand it. All of those thoughts, they're not real. They're constructs of your own idealism of what you think your life should be like, right? So every time those come up, rethink those and start asking yourself in honesty and truth, do I really not deserve this pain? Is this pain really negative, right? What's my body trying to tell me here? And as you start to do this, right, you do it over and over and over again, right? Because neuroplasticity, right? What is it? They're neural pathways. The reason we think things and do things so easily is because we've trained ourselves hundreds of thousands of times. We've gone over the same thoughts over and over and over again, right? We've made the same motions, the same thoughts, the same decision-making process, right? Over and over and over again. So we can do it instantly when we need to make our lives simpler, right? You drive a car, you drive it all around. You don't think twice, right? Because you've done it tens of thousands of times, right? You're thinking about how your life works and how the world works. You're like, oh, my life's always kind of sucks, so this and that, right? You instantly think like that. You go straight to it, you instantly think it. That's because you've trained yourself over and over and over again to use those patterns. Well, now, if you're ready to do work and get it done and get out of your situation, you're going to have to do the same thing to get out. There are things you can use to help the process along, right? I've talked about neuroplasticity a little bit. I'm going to talk about it again today. Putting yourself in a positive environment, surrounding yourself with positive, creative things will help your plasticity grow, so you won't have to train as hard as you do for the negative stuff that you built in there, right? You can use these kind of techniques that I've taught you previously that we'll go over again today, right? But you start training yourself out of that thinking. You start questioning your negative thinking. You start questioning your sensations that are happening in your body as negative, right? And you keep at it. You don't let it go. You might forget from time to time, right? But whether you have to write it down, set a reminder, write it in your calendar, whatever you have to do, you have to fight and rewrite these neural pathways, right? These thinking patterns that you have. You got to rewrite them. Okay? And that's how you stop having the stress reaction to pain. And guess what happens when you stop having the stress reaction to pain? You think the pain is what's killing you? It's not. Have you ever seen someone be in incredible pain and then like laugh. Like I got this kid that lives down the street, and every time he gets hurt, he starts laughing like crazy, and it's hilarious. And you can't help but laugh too. And you're like, dude, that looks like it hurts, and he's just laughing. And he's like, it does, and everybody's laughing. He's not. The kid is brilliant. I don't know how he did it or how it developed, right? But he's having a good time when he gets hurt. It doesn't stop the sensations he's receiving, right? But it does stop the stress that's coming from it, right? And guess what? That stress is what breaks down your body, not the pain signal. The pain signal doesn't do anything, right? Your nerves are wired to send those electrical signals all day long, and that's what they do. Every single beam of light that goes through your eyes, the sound that you hear, the sensations on your skin, all that stuff is meant to fire trillions of times a day, right? Right next to the pain signals, right? Your body is exceptionally good at doing that. It's not breaking down your body. The associated stress and the thinking patterns that you have from that do break down your body. That stress does break you down. It causes inflammation. It makes your chronic injury worse, right? It makes your thinking patterns worse. It makes your mind-body negative connections more visceral, and it reinforces them, and it tears it down, and it tears days and years off your life, right? It's the stress that's doing it, okay? So as you break that response to the pain, you in turn are reducing kind of the visceral, intense nature of that pain in a lot of ways, because you're not becoming as inflamed anymore, right? You're giving your body, your nervous system, the bandwidth to rectify the situation that's causing that pain. No matter, even if I don't care if your spinal cord severed, no matter what it is, your nervous system can rebuild that. It can. Whether it does or not is a different story, right? I mean, there's different physiological circumstance for everybody, right? But if we come from that inherent starting point that the body can heal anything, that anything's possible with the mind, all you have to do is accept that. Maybe it won't happen to you in your lifetime. That's okay. But I can tell you that an example of that is there somewhere in history. We've found it. We've seen it. You see shows about crazy healing and surviving, all kinds of stuff. Anything and everything has happened at some point in history to somebody, right? And the mind is the starting point for those things, okay? So you give yourself the neurological bandwidth. You reduce the stress. You're creating an environment where your body can heal and change the agitation and the unfortunate circumstances going on, right? When we talk about mind, this is what we're talking about. This is just one aspect of it, okay? This is just how you start to reduce that stress from the signals you're getting sent every day. And I get that, like every single day getting the same signals that we're told as a child that this means you're going to die, or this means something horrible is happening to you, right? We have to beat that. And then once we beat it, the whole game changes, right? And you're looking back at the people that trained you that way in your life, you're like, man, they were dumb and useless, right? Unfortunately, we're surrounded by dumb and useless people when it comes to this context. Like, everybody has their value, everybody has use, everyone has something they're brilliant at, right? But people are really, really brilliant at spreading around dumb, idiotic lies. And you're probably been completely saturated with it. You need to rethink the very foundations of why you think what you think. I mean, I have. I'm not any exception. And I was surrounded by some really brilliant people that told me not to believe the stuff that I was believing, but I went ahead and believed it anyway, right? So that gives you, again, you cannot just take what I'm saying and go and do it exactly as I'm saying it. You need to strive for understanding on your own, in your own context. You can understand and believe what I'm saying, right? And then you look at yourself and you start practicing, right? And then you realize that the way you understand what I said maybe wasn't exactly what I meant, right? And then you shift it and you change it and you practice it again. Now it works, right? And you understand why it works for yourself. And now you can take the next step and the next step, right? But fundamentally, you have to have your own understanding. You cannot rely on my words for your understanding. It doesn't work. Why am I saying that? I'm not being some ideological cool guy here. I'm not. This is a fact. I've worked with people who have gotten better. I've worked with people that haven't gotten better, right? This is the difference. This is kind of the linchpin for healing. Like a lot of coaches, a lot of people out there, a lot of doctors are saying, well, I try to help so many people and I do the same thing, but I help some people and then some people I just don't help at all and some people get hurt. I don't get it, right? This is why, right? So we're talking about mindset. If someone hears what I'm saying, goes to apply it without their own understanding, their mind, right, is going to generate whatever kind of thought, whatever kind of thinking it has around it. If it thinks this is wonderful, it's going to work great, it might work wonderful and it might be great for a little bit, right? And then as soon as their mindset shifts to something negative or they have some unexpected negative consequence, right, they're just going to crash out. That's because their success was based on their mental attitude. It wasn't based on their fundamental understanding. When you change your fundamental understanding and understand everything that you're doing, then you can build a positive mindset that can't be defeated, right? Because you've learned it for yourself. You've trained on it for yourself, right? You're becoming kind of indefeatable and indispensable for yourself, right? If you just rely on me or someone else for all that, it will have a failure point. And that may be first try, it may be years from now, right? But that's the difference between lasting, meaningful change and healing and temporary, superficial stuff, right? And that goes pretty deep. The chronic illness and injury recurs and it changes and it shifts for some people, and that's probably why they may actually overcome some stuff with positive attitude, right? But if they don't have the fundamental understanding of what's real in their mindset and what's not, it's just going to remanifest into some other injury, right? From poor habits, poor thinking, whatever it is, right? So this is why it's essential that you get your own fundamental understanding about things and then grow that, right? You're also going to be presented with really unique challenges that you're going to be the only one that ever faced those things. And so you're not going to be able to go to the doctor or to me or to someone else that has never faced it and will never face it again and ask for an answer, because the answer is going to be rubbish, right? Only you can be the expert and overcome these things. And I think we're all created for that kind of expertise. It's not an intellectual expertise. It's a kind of situational wisdom where we're all meant to kind of overcome and learn from the circumstances of our own life. And it's just destiny. It's just what we're here for. Human beings are vastly complex, incredible beings that have purpose and meaning. Some people don't think so, or some people may tell you otherwise, but I don't know. I found those people pretty useless in my life, and I mean, a lot of them are here standing shoulder to shoulder to me with chronic illness and other rubbish stuff because there's poor thinking patterns and decisions. Who wants to think that? Who wants to think they're not special and unique and powerful and wise and humble at the same time, right? Who doesn't want to have that kind of self-respect and compassion for the self? It doesn't require anything. It's inherent in everybody. You don't have to be loud and obnoxious and pretentious and over-intelligent and that guy that everybody thinks is so cool to be incredibly awesome and rad and self-compassionate and humble, right? It's the opposite. Those things are things that change people's lives. Even not even speaking a word, you can enter a room with people and change all their lives if you have the right attitude and the right mindset. It's just a fact. This is the way I see it, right? I refuse to believe anything else. I've tried. I have believed those other things, but it's all a bunch of failure and uselessness. So this is the foundations of mindset. This is what it means to change your mindset and to understand and to use it to heal from chronic illness and injury, right? And you kind of accept yourself, accept your life, and then go on from there, and everything will change because you're eliminating stress. You're eliminating all kinds of negative things by doing that. Okay, so that was kind of an introduction to what I wanted to talk about today, but as I'm thinking and talking through things, I'm realizing there's so much to mindset. I could probably make a series of podcasts for like 20 or 30, 40 hours or something going over every single last detail, but I'm going to stick to but you need to learn on your own. So I'm going to give you the fundamentals, starting points for all this stuff. And then if you practice diligently, you'll be able to learn the rest and master on your own. But I'm going to give you some concepts, and I'm going to fold the first page so that you can get started and go from there. So, and kind of this, all this stuff will be contextual stuff that I've dealt with that you're probably dealing with that are kind of modern problems. They're not all this esoteric, ancient answers to our modern problems, because that's only going to help so much. So ask yourself with your mindset, I kind of already touched on a little bit, what's holding you back? What's the problems, right? I can guarantee you that one of your largest problems is distraction. You're spending your time distracting yourself and doing other things. Maybe you're on social media, maybe you're watching a lot of TV, maybe you're constantly talking to people, right? Those are distractions from your mindset, right? When you're doing those things, you're not thinking through your mindset, you're not re-examining your thoughts, you're not re-examining the way you feel in your body, you're not re-examining how you're handling the whole situation, you're not improving your neuroplasticity doing those things, you're not retraining your brain to have positive associations and good associations with your bodily sensations, right? When you're in a distracted state, you are losing. The faster your day goes, ironically, it's just wasted, right? If your day is going slow and you're for the right reasons, right? You're focused on changing things, making a change in your body and your mind, right? And really understanding what's going on, what's happening to you, then that is provoking new neural pathways, right? New thinking patterns, new understandings, all this kind of new stuff, right? And you're going to have to do that. If you're like me, or you're like most of the people I know, you have all these things lined up in a day, and all these different things that you do that are all around distraction. You're on social media, you're talking, your relationships, you're doing a little bit of this, you're doing a little bit of that, and then if you do have any free time, you're watching some TV, you're watching a show, you're over exposed to media at night and in the morning. So you just put your brain in this catatonic state of distraction, which ironically is also what psychiatric drugs do to you, right? You found a substitute for a psychiatric drug to just blank you out so you don't have to deal with your negative thoughts and your now negative associations you have with your body sensations. Okay? That's not good. The distractions have to go. Do you have to cold turkey it overnight? No. If you try to do that, you're probably going to become suicidal like me if you have a chronic illness, right? But you do have to understand what you're doing, and you have to intentionally, with discipline, move to that place that you want to be. You have to limit your media exposure and eventually get rid of it, right? That's a huge thing. And I've done it. When I did my long fast and my other fasts, one of the first thing I realized is that, because I fast, I'm usually not on media when I'm doing that stuff, because it's just changing it up, right? Within the first day or two, I realized how powerful it is to be off social media and to be away from media in general, and to be like the 2 to 3 hours before bed, do not watch anything, do not watch any TV, don't do anything, just relax, right? Don't be exposed to media. Tons of people with insomnia, likely that's their major problem, right? If they could just not be using media a few hours before bed, and become bored, and start working through their thoughts and doing different things, they'd probably go float right to sleep. Okay? That's how powerful it is, right? But when I was fasting, within a day or two, I realized immediately, it's like, okay, I was so emotionally vulnerable from being on media and exposed to media all the time. All that stuff is brainwashing. You're just overexposing yourself to other people's ideas. That it's taking your emotions and on a roller coaster ride and just tugging up and down all over the place. And guess what? That's overstimulation. That kind of mental up and down is overstimulation to your nervous system that's already dysregulated, which you might as well just take your hand and put it in the door frame and just start slamming the door on it for some people like us. It's a horrible idea. It doesn't go well for you. It just agitates and dysregulates your nervous system even more. Okay? So the first thing, look at your media usage and limit it and try to remove it altogether. It might not happen. You might not be able to do it all together. But once you start working through it and gaining the understanding for yourself, you'll be able to see the difference of being without it. And then you'll know what's real and what's not. And then you can go from there. For you, if getting rid of it altogether is the answer, then do that. Okay? If for you, severely limiting it is what you're going to do it. Okay? But I can guarantee you, the amount of exposures that most of us have are completely unhealthy and counterproductive, and you cannot heal. You will never get 100% better with a lot of media exposure. It won't happen. It won't happen. It will not happen. Like, it is so manipulative and hard on your nervous system that you will not get 100% better. Like, people think, oh, like eating a bunch of sugar, caffeine and stuff has a big impact. It does have a big impact. I can tell you the social media, if you're on social media every day a lot, it has a bigger impact than drinking caffeine and not sleeping for 2 weeks. And I dare you to try to get off. Try to get off. Like, be like, hey, I'll cold turkey for a week. See what happens. You will not even believe how negatively your body and your mind will react to that. It's absolutely bonkers, right? And yeah, that it seems horrible when you experience something like that, but it's not. It's your mind and your body telling you something very important. So listen to that, figure it out, and then go from there. So on this topic of emotional overstimulation, right? I think this is the best analogy that I've heard. And so I kind of keep it in mind and I think about it, because there'll be days when I'm doing well and I do a few things, and then all of a sudden, like, I just not handling things well, and I just get really negative. I might have some suicidal ideation, like it's that bad, right? And then everything is just in the toilet and things are horrible. And on those days, maybe I'm not doing anything particularly bad. And like, I'm eating well, I'm doing all the stuff I should be feeling well, right? I start asking myself, what's going on here? And every single time in this particular type of scenario, right, I look at my brain like a bank account. So I do positive, fun things that make me feel good, things that make me feel creative and inspired and happy to be alive, right? Even if I may not feel good, I can read a good book, right? Draw some beautiful art. Listen to kids play, right? Look at other art, right? Incredible art, different things. Like, go out in nature, right? Hear birds chirping and different stuff, right? It always lifts me up. It always brings me up. It's always a deposit into my bank account. It always makes me feel better, right? And when I say I'm starting at a zero balance, like I'm up $5 after doing some of that stuff, right? Then there's the stuff that are withdrawals from my bank account, my mental bank account, right? Someone's complaining at me. Someone's playing music and then they're also talking to me at the same time, right? It's overstimulating me, right? And then they're complaining to me about something about this or that or whatever, or I'm just not good enough, or they're just complaining about something that sucks for them, but if I try to help them out with it, they just don't want to be helped, so it's permanently going to be bad, and they just don't care, and they're just floundering around and thrashing everybody, right? And me. I watch a show or a movie, right? And it's about this guy, everything's going good for him, or lady, or whoever, or an ape. I just watched Planet of the Apes the other day. And then everything's going great. And then their wife gets murdered, right? And then they get pissed off and they murder a bunch of people. And you get this Western mindset of like revenge and horror and like all this stuff going. And maybe it ends on a good note, right? And then I come out of there and I'm not feeling so great. I'm a little like, okay, fine. Like maybe I was at $5 positive. Now I'm back at 0, right? And I'm just like, okay, I'm fine. I can get on with my day. But I just spent 2 hours watching a movie that made a negative mental withdrawal for me and reinforced this mindset of like, bad crap happens to everybody. The boogeyman always comes for you and takes what they want, and then you got to fight to get it back, right? This is just fiction, like in the general sense, right? We have this crazy idea in American society, at least, right? Like there's these ideas of being mad and being vengeful and being violent, right? And then revenge and people cheating on you and being distrustful, right? And violating your trust, and then you have to do something to take it back, and do something else, right? And then the man's always coming for you to get you down and all this stuff, right? This is horrible, right? This is the lives and the culture that we're building for ourselves, which is all just withdrawals from the bank account for no reason. It's fiction. It's other people with bad lives and bad ideas deciding to make an entertaining movie about it that's a net loss for everybody. And then the next guy watches that movie and says, this is a great movie. I'm just going to redo it and change the characters around, and everybody will watch it again and pay a bunch of money to do it, and I'll line my pockets with it. right? I mean, it's a joke. It's a disgusting joke. American media and movies and stuff, like 99% of it is a complete barf fest. Like it's just idiotic, right? And the reason I'm saying that is because my family or somebody that I know or a friend or whatever, they want to go do something, right? And like I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, this is gonna be like a withdrawal from my bank account. I want to go try to have fun with my friends, and they want to go see a horror movie or do whatever, right? Or even go deal with a lot of people out and about are dumb. Like you drive around, and driving is usually a net loss for me, right? People, they cut me off. Like I used to kind of drive fast and aggro, but I've stopped, right? Because it's overstimulating and I get frustrated. Now I drive slow, drive in the slow lane, and just try to chill the whole time. I'm getting cut off, and people are putting my life and my family's life in danger constantly doing it, and it's just a net loss. Every time I try to go somewhere, something just is a withdrawal from the bank account, right? Like I'm working really hard on having a mindset where I can just let go of all that stuff and drive around and just be fine and not be affected by it. But it's difficult. It takes a lot of effort and change for my mental patterns for someone that's kind of thinks it's fair to keep themselves and others safe with their actions, because apparently that's not a thing anymore. You can go out there and drive your car fast and cut people off and put people's lives in danger, and it's just a joke to everybody. But look at it like that, okay? So you have a bank account, right? Like you make deposits in with the positive stuff, and then the negative stuff is making withdrawals, right? You can't get around it. I mean, you can try to change the circumstance and like condition yourself and inoculate yourself against stress and certain negative circumstances and stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure that we can really escape that very much. But that's a part of mindset, right? You need to surround yourself. Like also, if you're making $1,000 in deposits, and when you're out and about and through meditation, lots of different positive stuff, right? And then you're taking away $5-10 and you have $1,000 in there, it's not going to run you down. It's not going to affect you. And that's how people are beating chronic illness as well. They're surrounding themselves with creative, positive, wonderful stuff incessantly, like all day, every day, right? They're building up huge deposits. They have a huge, tremendous, positive, disciplined mindset, and then they can deal with a lot of crap, and it's fine because it's going to happen, right? There's no getting out of that. So I think of it like that, or at least when it comes to understanding why I feel the way that I feel, I think about it like that. I work on my mindset in all the kind of ways that we've outlined, but when it comes down to me figuring out why I'm not reacting well, I realize I need to make some deposits, right? It helps me just understand what's going on and then maybe structure, my future and what I want to plan coming up or what I want to do in a positive way. So that kind of leads me into my next really, really important fact, and that is that your ability to heal is only greater than the doubt you surround yourself with. And that supersedes all kind of rules and thinking on everything, okay? And so what do I mean by that, right? Your ability to heal is only going to be effective if your belief in that healing is greater than the doubt that's sown around you, right? So say you're online, say you're in the groups, and you're doing this and that, and people are just like, that doesn't work, or you should try this, or here's the scientific reason behind why that won't work, or here's a scientific study that shows that this is better, right? And all this stuff, right? Those are all seeds of doubt, because no study is perfect. Most studies are complete rubbish to begin with, but right. So all the evidence that's being thrown at you on a daily basis and by your friends and family or whatever, like it's all flawed. People love to talk about this evidence and all this stuff in there. It's all a joke, right? We have all these supplements and medications that are all scientifically proven to be helpful and to do all these things for you. Guess what? They don't work, right? It's not a thing, right? There's very little scientific basis for very few treatments, right? Especially not when it comes to chronic illness and injury, okay? Again, if we're talking about a physiological injury, there's some circumstances where science is been very effective. We're not talking about that stuff here. We're talking about dealing with chronic injury and neurological injury, right? So what is this? What are the implications of this, right? So no matter what happens and what you do, right, your faith and your belief in getting better has to outweigh what's going on around you in terms of the ideas you're getting in and you're receiving and that are being sent to you, right? So if say you want to do a fast and you're working on fasting, right? And you believe you're going to get better and great stuff, and then friend comes along, they're like, dude, fasting is, dude, you're going to die. Like it's super bad for you. You're not eating. Human beings are meant to eat. You know, you need to have a healthy weight. You know, you need to, you know, it's just that's a horrible idea. You need calories to live. Like one of my doctors was like, you're gonna die. Human beings need supplements and like all these vitamins and all these things, right? Like you're gonna go on. This is before I did my fast. He's like you're gonna severely injure yourself on this fast, right? And I'm like, holy crap, this guy's like, he's really fanatical about it, right? And he buys into supplements. It's his things. He sells his clients supplements and he does all this stuff. Like, great. I've taken the vast majority of the supplements that you've given, and guess what? They didn't do anything for me, and they didn't help me at all, right? And you're going to tell me fasting is not going to work. I'm like, one, I did my research, I know, and two, wow, okay, I got it, right? So I did my fast. It was a tremendously powerful healing experience for me, right? And I got to go back in there and talk to him about it, which I did very humbly, and I just let him kind of draw what he did. I didn't try to give him any ideas or tell him what it meant. I just let him hear my experience, and that was totally cool. He's a great guy. It just doesn't, just because he doesn't see things the way I do doesn't make him any less of a rad guy. So, right, that's a good example of, I had to overcome that, right? I had a lot of other support and a lot of other efforts I made, right? But other people I've definitely met, whether it's fasting or some other method, right? They've been in the middle of doing something to help themselves, right? And then they start having friends and other people come in and start telling them different ideas and different things about them getting better or whatever. And then before you know it, it's crashed out. It's like they're getting one result, then all of a sudden that result just changes based on their exposure to other people, right? You cannot beat this mind component. Like if you think that you're going to find the magical treatment for neurological injury and that's going to be your ticket out, and it doesn't matter how sad or depressed or the lack of belief you have in your own healing, it's not going to, okay, if it does happen, let me know. I'd love to hear it, right? But everyone I've talked to, everything I've seen, all my experiences have shown that it's not going to happen. You have to have belief in your recovery, your ability to get better, that supersedes the doubt that's being sown around you. And I'm just kind of giving this as a fundamental rule. Like I've done a lot of things, right, and had kind of positive momentum and stuff, and there's been these moments where people just said enough negative stuff to me where I just finally kind of threw my hands up and I was like, man, you know what, maybe they're right. I just like, there's like 20 people telling me right now that something's not going to work out, or that I have a bad idea, or that things aren't going as well as I thought, you know, and you know what, they're right. Some part of me was like, they're right, and then things just start to deteriorate and fall apart from there. You know, I've seen it, I've experienced it lots of times in my life with this and other things, right? But that's a baseline. Obviously, that falls in line with the other things that I've told you about, right? Like the bank account, kind of looking at things like a bank account with negative and positive, and then thinking patterns and stuff like that, right? But no matter what you do, no matter how good all your efforts are, what I'm trying to say now is that this kind of supersedes everything, right? If more doubt is sown around you than your belief, it doesn't matter if you're fasting. It doesn't matter. I know this is for a fact. When you're fasting, if you're fasting and people are sowing doubt around you, you will crash. This is extremely well documented in the fasting community. It's in almost every single book on fasting. So if you surround yourself with naysayers, your fast is not going to work out, right? And that's a powerful statement. It tells us something very powerful and very, very, very useful, right? But that's kind of a baseline. Whatever you're doing, remember that. Like, this is also kind of an incentive to fill your bank account with the positive, and really worry about your expenditures and your negative outgoing transactions, right? So think about that. Weigh that in, okay? Now I want to talk a little bit about the power of creativity in thinking, okay? I think it's Joe Dispenza talks about, I think he mentioned it, and it really struck home for me, because as I've entered into middle age, I've seen people with midlife crises and different things really get kind of wacky and bonkers, and do some stuff that I didn't understand. And some of this stuff with my TMS injury, I thought, like, I wonder if some sort of midlife change is contributing to the difficulty I'm experiencing with it. Because it seems like it could be a real thing, right? Even though I didn't understand it. But Joe Dispenza described it in this way. He said that you spend in between 30 and 40 years, your brain spends 30 to 40 years mastering its environment. So it's done all of these tasks like driving, talking, thinking, exercising, having relationships with people, all this stuff. It's done it so many times that when you get in between 30 and 40, your conscious mind has programmed your subconscious in your body so well in order to minimize its labor efforts, right, of figuring out new things, that you no longer have anything new to figure out. You can literally go on autopilot all day and just do whatever and never really have to think, challenge yourself, or do anything new. And you can just exist in that state for the rest of your life. Like, everything you've done everything enough times to where you no longer have to think about anything. And when I heard that, my mind exploded, because that's exactly the kind of sensation that I've had with my life, is that everything I do, like, I get little to no emotion from, because I've already done everything. People are just asking me to do different variations of all the things I've already done, right? Everything I do and everywhere I go is all the same things, all the same ideas, all from the same people, doing the same things, asking me to do the same things over and over and over again, right? And so he's saying that the midlife crisis is a result of us basically going bonkers because we no longer have anything to spend our conscious energy on, right? People fill it with all kinds of dumb stuff. They start drinking, or being belligerent, or being unfaithful, like doing all these different things, right? And that's really out of the kind of this desire to occupy yourself, or for you to feel something new and creative, I think, coming back into your life in a very, very misguided way, right? But I've felt this really strongly, that like everything that I do now, I've done it all. Like, I don't need to think about it anymore. So it's really, and then I look at kids, and I'm like, man, why are you guys having so much fun? Kids, they're doing nothing, and they're coloring on the walls, and they're peeing in the kitchen sink, and they're throwing food around the house, right? And they're screaming, and they're laughing, and they're having all this fun, right? It's because it's all new to them. They're just going nuts because it's so stimulating and so creative and so challenging and so fun, right? They just cannot get enough of it, and they just run wild all day until they just crash out at night, and then they get up and they do the same thing over again. And there's these different stages of their life where they're learning like kind of these physical things about the rules of reality and physicality, and then they start to get a little bit older and they start to have these social relationships, and they start to have friendships, and they're learning about their friendships and what they can and can't say to other people and how they react and how they feel about things, and they're developing an ideological self and all this stuff, right? And they're so passionate about it, it's so incredible, right? And we also know that their neuroplasticity is extremely high, right? And they learn new languages and all these things incredibly well. And I think they're related. They're either part of the same thing, or they're facilitating each other, right? So if we look at that, right, we look at this kind of phenomena that maybe a lot of us are experiencing or have already experienced for a while, of our brain not being challenged if we're in middle age or later age, right? If you're younger, ask yourself the role that this plays, or the role that creativity and a zeal for life plays. But plasticity is based on kind of excitement, right? Stress is the idea that there's nothing you can do, you're screwed, it's all going to go bad, right? So that like calcifies like our neural pathways, right? Calcify just mean like petrify, whatever you want. It hardens the pathways. It makes them inflexible, right? It makes them harder to break. It makes it more painful. The whole process gets bad, right? Based on stress. The opposite is also true, right? The more creative we are, the more fun we have, the more we enjoy things, right? That is based on our mindset. Remember about reprogramming your mindset. This comes in, right? The more creativity we have, the more fun we have, right? Our neural pathways become more pliable. We're exploring new things. We're practicing exploring new things when we haven't explored new things in a long time, right? And so the more we explore new things and the funner we have with stuff and the more challenged we feel in a healthy way and not a stressful way, right? We become more open to new ideas. We get good at learning new things again. We get good at considering new ideas. We get good at thinking differently, okay? We get good at thinking about pain differently. We get good about thinking about our stressful relationships differently. Maybe those stressful relationships we have aren't actually stressful at all. Maybe they just are, right? Maybe your bills will get paid, and if they don't, something else will happen in your life, and maybe it'll be an adventure, right, that you're ready for, but you don't want to do. All kinds of possibilities out there, but if we're not ready for them, and we're rigid, and we fight them, right, it's going to go horribly. And for a lot of us, this is the wall we've been bucking up against for our whole lives. I certainly have, to a certain degree, right? I've had a lot of fun, but I've had a lot of stress and negativity as well, due to circumstances, right? So, your mindset, creativity in thinking, right? And bringing that back into our lives, a hobby, something that gives us positive. You may be in such a bad state neurologically right now because of the chronic illness or the injury that you can't experience positivity or happiness or anything like that anymore, right? If you keep reinforcing that state of not feeling anything, being zoned out, and you're just in this constant hole, right? If you keep reinforcing that, then you're just going to get better and better and better and better at it, okay? So you have to choose when you're going to stop reinforcing it and start building something else. When you start building something else, you're just not going to feel like anything. You may even feel bad. Your body may revolt. Your mind may revolt and be like, this is a new pathway, or one that I haven't used in a long time, or one that I've buried. It's not comfortable for me. I don't like being in here. This is too much work. I don't want to do work, right? So you're going to have to ask yourself how you want to handle that. You want to feed the monster under the bed, or do you want to feed the stuffed bunny rabbit that you sleep with? Yeah, I like that. We'll go with that. That's friendly to you, that's trying to help you through something instead of weigh you down or keep you fearful. What is it, right? So creativity, I've given you kind of some ideas and some context to how powerful creativity is. It's incredibly powerful, right? And the less you okay, so the amount of creativity you can kind of muster and use is kind of directly related to the amount of boredom you have, right? Like, if you're constantly distracting yourself, you will have no creativity. You're reinforcing the pathways that you constantly use all the time over and over and over again, so you don't have to think, right? And you can keep yourself in that unconscious state. If you start doing things differently, no matter what they are, it's going to force your brain to think and to move and to actually build new pathways or change the ones that you're in now, right? So this is going to change your circumstance. It's going to open up bandwidth for you and give you reasons to start thinking about things differently and to generate some creativity and to think about things differently, right? It all goes down a different street than where you're used to going, right? And you may not feel it for a while, depending on what you do, but you go down this different street, guess what? You're going to end up at a different location. And guess what again? You know one thing for sure. You do not want to be at the location that you've been at for a while with chronic illness and injury. You know that, right? So does it matter where that other street takes you? What is that other street going to take you to a torturous death? Well, I don't know. Maybe it will. But guess what? You're already there. So it's not going to hurt you to go somewhere else. Is it possible that you could end up with a different set of symptoms in a different bad situation? Yeah, that's possible. Some people have done that. I'm not going to lie to you, right? And then they hate their new set of symptoms, right? But you have the stones to go somewhere else. Things are changing. You have an opportunity to move again. You can keep moving, right? You can keep changing. You have to ask yourself if you are. Most of the people that go somewhere else, they at least get the chance to escape. Some of them take a side street and kind of start meandering back towards that dark place, right? And they end up in a different dark place. But not one of them can say they didn't have the opportunity to get out. Everyone that I know that ended up in a different dark place, they were given the opportunity to get out, and then they chose to go back to the darkness. Why they would do that, I don't know, right? But maybe I do know. I've had my own set of setbacks. I've been lured back into making bad decisions because I was having a lot of fun. I fell into an old mindset or whatever. So you know what? I do know what it's like to go back to that dark place. For sure. Sometimes we have setbacks and we end up back place for circumstance we can't. I got COVID and I got long COVID. It set me all the way back to ground zero a while back, right? There's nothing I could have done about that. I did my best with it, right? But a few months later, I did my long fast, and then I went from being set back to ground zero and not wanting to be alive anymore to being in the best condition that I've been since I've been injured by far, right? So that mine isn't the only story like that. There's lots of them, okay? So mindset, it's critically important, right? If you build a strong mindset and you work on these things, they can take your body out of anything that it's in and put it into a better place and get there. Flip side is also true. If you really trash your body, it's going to pull your mindset down. It's going to make withdrawals from your bank account, right? And that's just that, right? If you have an immaculate body, your mind will have an easy time. If you have an immaculate mind, your body will have an easy time, right? They go hand in hand. But the fact is, for 99.9 billion of us, all of it lies somewhere in the middle. The body and the mind both play a huge role in these things, and they push and they pull against each other. I've never met a single person with a mind immaculate enough to pull their body out, right? I've heard stories, but I've never met a person. Same thing with the body. I've never met a person with a body immaculate enough to pull their mind out completely into a completely safe spot, right? I've met some pretty healthy people whose mind really operates well because they're so healthy, but they got stuff going on too, they have hardships. So don't over idealize the situation. You're somewhere in the middle. So if we work on both of them the best that we can, as much as we can, you're going to make some serious progress, and it's going to happen very quickly. Okay? So that was kind of the totality of like my notes on mindset and what I have for it for now. This topic goes on and on and on. There's so many good things. I mentioned Joe Dispenza before. I had a lot of ideas and stuff, and when I read his stuff, he kind of pushed it a step farther. I gave examples or articulated it better. I really liked his stuff. There's a lot of other stuff in this realm too. So feel free to check it out. And really appreciate you listening. I think this is gonna. So I'll do a epilogue, to kind of summarize my thoughts. I think on this stuff maybe, but I might take a while to do that. So this is probably all I'll have for now. Because I already had a prologue that kind of summarized things, and then an epilogue maybe, but maybe I'll come back with anything that I think I missed during the series and throw that in the epilogue, kind of like a latent thoughts kind of thing. So we'll see. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. I really hope things go well for you. I've marked the first corner. So, yeah. Take care. Take it easy.